they made it very clear to me that one, don't rely on the family business. Because we are focused so much on curriculars, extracurriculars would always take a backseat because business needs to be razor sharp, focused on something.
Yeah.
And I think the third is entrepreneurship is a mindset. And suddenly a kid got a concept, and for me that's such a high that wow, someone learned today.
Hello and welcome back to the latest episode of GIBS IRE Talks Podcast, powered by GIBS Business School, Bangalore, the place where innovation meets inspiration. We are in the heart of Bangalore, a city which is known for startups, and startups spring up every day. And we have startups which are taking off in a very, very big way, some becoming unicorns, some struggling, and there are some which hold promise to become superstars. And today we are very, very lucky to have a co-founder of one of the inspiring startup company called Spark Studio. And we have with us Ms. Namita Goel. And it's a pleasure to connect with you, Namita, this afternoon. And it'll be a pleasure to have a conversation with you on your startup, your journey, and all that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Let me, without much ado, I want to start with the first question. A startup is something which you have created, you and your co-founders have created as a child. I want to know about your childhood. How was your childhood? How are you as a student? What were your learnings and what were your challenges? Just give a brief about your...
Sure. So just a disclaimer, a lot of things that I'm going to say in an educational institute as a student may not be received very well.
That's fine. Most of the students are like that.
So I was born and brought up in a small town in Uttar Pradesh called Bareilly. And so I've spent like good 20 years of my life there. So I would say that as a student, my earliest memory that I have of being a somewhat successful student is in grade 7 and 8. Prior to that, I think my parents were really worried about me.
Your parents were from education background or something like that?
No. So my father, he was an entrepreneur, and my mom was a homemaker. She had a tall task of managing 3 of us. So I have an older sister and a younger brother, and we are all 2 years apart.
Okay.
So I think. But what I really admire about my parents is that even after marriage, they continue to study. So my parents, both of them completed their law after getting married.
Okay.
So while I was brought up in a small town in a very conservative business class family, but my parents were different from their siblings and from the rest of the family. So they really, I think I would give a lot of credit of who I am today to my parents, because they made it very clear to me that one, don't rely on the family business. You have to become your own individual. That is one. The second thing that they really, really ensured was that school is just not enough. You have to do beyond school. Something.
The wholesome education.
Absolutely. So they made sure that if there was some extempore, if there was some debate competition, if there was some writing competition, whatever there was, they would ensure that we are participating in it. And they're like, don't worry about whether you will pass or you will fail, but you have to participate in it. And so I think that those learnings like really stand out for me because that really shaped not just me, even my siblings, of who we are. And I think that, in all honesty, that has been the key force behind whoever I am today.
The bedrocks were made in Bareilly.
Absolutely. That they gave me that space to be who I am. And I think as a childhood, there were a lot of hardships. Because, in a business class family, you have really good times, then you don't have very good times. So I think a crucible moment of my life was when my father, he suffered from a brain stroke. And this was during my class 12th board exams. And I think that crucible moment really, I would say I suddenly became a grown-up, suddenly assumed a lot of responsibility, suddenly became very aware of how fragile life is. Like, he was sleeping and he woke up and he had lost all his memory.
Adversities actually bring
adversities,
out.
Exactly. So I think that the upbringing that my parents gave me, and I think this crucible moment of my life really defined who I am today.
Great.
So I think the fondest of my memories are, going with my parents for these competitions that are outside. Like I never felt that I'm competing, but I felt that they were always encouraging. They were there for me, and they ensured that they knew that school is not sufficient. And I think the learning for me was when my father suffered from brain stroke, and how collectively as a family we were very young, how we came past it.
And you handle those situations very well. That itself is an education by its own, isn't it?
Yeah, because I think one of the things was the choices that we had to make at that point, and be okay with those choices was very, very important for us.
Great. But I'll go to the next stage of your life.
Sure.
I'm sure after those initial learnings in Bareilly and all those adversities that taught you something, and the importance of education given by your parents, your journey into the work life started with you as a journalist first, and then you transitioned to sort of an edtech company, then you held leadership positions. How come this bug of entrepreneurship?
So I would say that for me, becoming a journalist or a teacher was very accidental.
Okay.
Because as I mentioned about adversity, so I went back to what I knew, because I was like, okay, suddenly the person who was guiding me is the one who needs guidance.
True.
At this point. So I think I went back to what I knew really well, was writing. So my mother really encouraged me. So I started writing for Times of India while I was in college for the local edition of Bareilly. And by the time I graduated, I had like some more than 25 articles published. That gave me a lot of boost of confidence that if Times of India can publish me, then maybe I'm good at this.
Really good, yes. True.
So I did.
So content creation happened then.
Content creation happened then, and I was looking at one of the first articles that ever got published was actually talking about how literacy and education are two different things. I didn't even realize, like, I think that thought had germinated
there.
but I never it reached fruition much later. And for me, Teach for India was the journey in education. This year marks 15 years of being an educator. So I was in my media job, very comfortable, doing well. I was just listening to this radio, and this message of Teach for India came in.
Oh, that was a moment.
That was a moment, and there's some, you hear so many ads, and this ad just stuck with me, and I filled up the form, got selected, and I don't know what compelled me to it. I still honestly don't have an answer to it, but it just felt right.
True.
Was it an easy decision? It was not, because leaving a job and going to a stipend, teaching as a profession is not something that people aspire for. So it was a tough call to take, despite
but
all.
Probably an inner calling.
Inner calling, I would absolutely say. Now, when I talk to my family, they express so much pride in that decision, which felt as a big mistake at that point, back in 2009.
Great. Let's come to your startup, and now the startup is about 5 years.
Startup is 3.5 years.
3.5 years,
and prior to that, of course, the leadership position that I held. So you can say, yes, the startup, the journey of my being in a startup it's going to be now 9 years almost.
Oh, 9 years almost. But this Spark Studio is making waves already, and all of us had a look at the tremendous website and the app that you people have created. But how did you and your co-founders, the like-minded co-founders, is a must for a startup to take off? How did you people think about this specific area to get into? Child extracurricular education, modules around them. How did this idea come up to you and your co-founders?
Definitely. So I'll just take one step back. So when I was at LEAD, prior to joining LEAD in 2016, my husband and I, we were in the US, and I was teaching in the US. And over there, I think one thing that stood out for me was that the way the school timetable was structured. So the students used to come to school at 7, and they would be in the school till 4:35 and wouldn't mind staying there. till
True.
4:35.
In US, that's the system. Yes.
Yeah, and I was like, why is that? And I realized that the way the timetable was followed was very non-linear. Like the way we have very linear timetable, they have a very non-linear timetable with extracurriculars padded in throughout the day.
True.
And I think for me that was one really important aspect that stood out. But when I came back to India, of course, I think curriculars is where everybody's focus was, and everybody was working really hard towards. So lead school, I think what it did wonderfully very well was, because I was one of the founding team members, so the mindset, the way I operated was always as an owner. Like I'm not working for someone, I'm working with someone.
With them, yes.
So I think those 4.5 years of working at Lead really helped me understand how to operate, how to scale a business from 0 to 1, how to develop something which can cater to millions of audience, millions of users.
So you are almost like an entrepreneur there.
That's how I operate.
Yes. Great.
And I think, but because we are focused so much on curriculars, extracurriculars would always take a backseat because business needs to be razor sharp, focused on something. So if my desire is to do something which I feel is outside of curriculars, because there's so much work already happening in curriculars, there's so much emphasis on curriculars, I somehow felt that personally, the way I was when I was a student, the who I am today, a lot of it has got to do with the exposure that I received outside of school. That I knew how to talk an academic language, but can I hold a general conversation? The fact that I'm sitting with you here talking, I could not have even imagined.
True.
So I think for me, that is what was a key driver, that something that really helped me, something that resonated with me. And like company like Lead is already doing so much for them in school. Let me do something which can supplement that learning, or which can really boost that learning.
Absolutely.
And provide a holistic approach to the child. And that's what led to us starting off in extracurriculars. And this was also during pandemic, when kids were at home. Parents really didn't know how to manage their kids.
Parents had a hell of a time during COVID as to how to engage them.
And we were like, this is a great opportunity.
So these modules of music, English speaking, all these things were brainchilds during that time?
Absolutely, during that time. So we decided like what are the verticals of focus. So we looked at multiple studies, and the 3 verticals of focus came out for communication, music and visual arts. And over a period of 2.5 years, we realized that communications came up as one of the biggest needs. Music and visual arts were, you can say, while I somehow feel they're extremely important for the holistic development of a child, but at the end of the day, parents are the key decision makers. And they felt that communication will give their kids a better social mobility in life. So how can we harness that? And with that in mind, we realized like life classes had, because there's a small group of kids, there's a certain cost that is attached to serving those. So the access is still limited. And with the power of AI, we thought that how can we make this access like go all out to everyone at a price which makes sense to everyone.
So you have fairly good number of users from the tier 2, tier 3 cities also of India?
Absolutely. So we started off with, of course, who we knew. We knew, our friends and family, users from our live classes. So users from our live classes were also coming from tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities. So we first reached out to them up with Sparky, and then based on the feedback and the compliments that we received from them gave us a lot of confidence that let's go all out. But we have a lot of users from tier 2, tier 3 cities as well. And not just in India, we also have users from different parts of Southeast Asia and Europe.
And are they all mostly in NRIs and
No.
people from, is it?
They're natives.
Oh, that's great. That's incredible. That's really incredible.
And without trying too hard about it, but because we are launching a new product, we are in a learning phase, so not restricting reaching all out. With specific, we had thought of Southeast Asia and Europe.
Yeah.
Should I repeat? Southeast Asia and Europe, as because over there the English is considered as a second language. So those were the nations that we focused on, and we were very surprised to receive that Europeans were really loving it.
I think these learnings for kids is universal, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And ma'am, you also touched about that very interesting logo or mnemonic, what the Sparky. I've got to see that fox character that you created as a AI character who teaches the kids English speaking or anything.
Absolutely.
How did this idea come?
Sure. So I think one thing is kids, because we wanted to provide them a setting which is different from school.
Okay.
In a school, they have a tutor, and tutor is someone you always look up to. You always know that this person is a little above me.
Yeah.
However, when you are at home, and we wanted to create a judgment-free environment for kids where they can just practice speaking English.
A buddy.
Like
A sort of buddy, yeah.
Exactly. So with that intent is what we thought about, what is a character that they can connect with. If we keep a face of a male or a female, then they will again, the association is that this
Again,
is a teacher.
Yeah.
However, if you keep a fox or an animal, basically, if you go with that, they find they make an immediate connection. Yes. Also, we have noticed that because AI, just like any other technology, AI is also, it has its own flaws.
True.
So if there's an animal as a character, we've noticed that users in general are a little more patient if they make a mistake.
Yes, true.
So it makes them more real, actually. Sparky can also make a mistake.
Yes, true.
Otherwise, the image of a teacher is someone who's perfectionist. And I think that's not the healthy mindset for learning.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's a very, very nice thought. One other question I always wanted to ask educators and edtech co-founders is, what is the high you get in educating people, educating kids? Is it, may not be the best paying profession or business, but is there any high that you get because you are helping kids?
I think it's the mindset. I'll be honest. So back in 2009, when I started off as a teacher, I'll tell you the first 2 months of my journey were arduous. I was under tremendous pressure, and it was not a pressure that was put by anyone externally, but a self-pressure. That I have to impart learning. And I think the mindset shift that happened for me was that they don't know that they need. You are thinking they need help, but they are not even aware. Absolutely. How will they receive what you're giving them? Step one is to take a step back first, understand where they are.
Correct.
And then you start thinking about how can you meet them? How can you both meet each other in the middle? So I think for me, the high that I get or the excitement that I get is when suddenly I see children getting concepts on a real-time basis. Like I was sharing with you that whenever any user is interacting with Sparky, we get a user transcript of all their conversation.
And I got to see the reviews of some of the kids and parents. They're awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. And looking at those transcripts, and suddenly a kid got a concept, and for me that's such a high that wow. Someone learned today, one student at a time.
And let's go to the startup ecosystem in Bangalore. So many startups are there. I'm sure even in the edtech ecosystem also, there are so many sort of learning platforms for kids. May not be very, very similar to your startup. But how is the competition around in this area, and how do you tackle it with your strategizing, you and your co-founders, all brilliant minds? How do you manage this?
So I think competition for me is a healthy sign that there's a need.
Yeah.
So if there is enough competition, it informs me that there is a need that people are wanting to solve for.
True.
So that is step one. So I think one thing in education is that we are constantly trying to find a moat. Now, what is our moat can differ. Let's look at generative AI. Generative AI, almost now everybody has access to it. So if anybody wants to build a conversational chatbot today, it's not a difficult thing. So they can build a conversational chatbot. But I think what kind of signals to give to the chatbot to ensure that it's having meaningful conversation, engaging conversation. Similarly, what kind of interactions do we add during that journey, while the user is on that journey? For example, at what point should I show a video? Like, how do I make it multimodal for the kids? That is so I think when we think about, we constantly keep our razor sharp focus on what is it that we do that will deliver maximum value to the kid, to our consumers.
So it's not just the content alone, but the way the content is delivered.
Absolutely, because a lot of in a classroom, a lot of it has got to do with pedagogy. That I may have the best content, but I don't have the strategy to deliver it effectively. I cannot do that. So how do I deliver it effectively is something that we constantly are working towards. That how do we reach or understand our users really well? So a lot of consumer, like every day we spend time talking to our consumers, constantly understanding what is it that our consumers want. We are a YC backed company. So Y Combinator always told us like build what customers want. So and that's what we fundamentals. Absolutely, it's the fundamental things that are most important.
True.
And so that's exactly what we do. That prioritization is our most important weapon. If we haven't prioritized, we will go all over the place, and we need to first build a bullock cart before we build a rocket.
True.
So that's what we are focused on.
Namita, I want to ask you another dimensional question is kids, especially between 5 to 10, through your app, you would have reached so many kids in the country, beyond and all that. So their requirements of education are changing from, the olden textbook age to now AI type of education. So what are the future requirements going to be? Could you people envisage what is going to come, and what are the requirements for their learnings?
I think AI, I somehow feel, is going to be the front and center. Just like I think 2 decades back, digital classrooms was a new thing that came in. And suddenly people realized like, oh, I can now see a video, or I can do an interactive activity in the classroom, which was not something which people had even envisioned. That blackboards were replaced by smartboards. And I think AI has a similar power.
And the kids have capability to pick up these things fast?
I think kids are digital natives. We are the immigrants.
I'm sure.
So I have a 1.5-year-old son. Of course, he has zero digital intervention. Like we keep him away from gadgets. But I know the day he gets a phone in his hand, he would know what to do with it.
True. Okay, what's next on agenda for Namita Goel as a co-founder of Spark Studio, and what else are your plans for the next 5 years in this space?
Next 5, I think EdTech is now getting started, is what I think, with AI. What has happened is a lot of redundancies. I would say AI is a great enabler. It's a great tool. Can it replace a human? I don't think so. I think then we are really, really overreaching. I think we need to understand where it can help us, leverage that, and really scale up. So I think AI is going to be front and center, and I think just like digital smart boards, AI is going to be in every classroom. And if it is not in every classroom, that means that classroom, it needs to be there. It needs to get there. So I think AI will become a common consumer household setup, just like a digital recorded video classrooms are now. And I think every child the teachers definitely have a taller task now, that they would they'll
have to raise up.
Absolutely. So I think it will not and I think this is something that many of the new age institutes are already doing, focusing a lot on application of learning, focusing a lot on what, not just repurposing what you have learned, but actually figuring out like where can you apply it in your life. So it is no longer about the breadth of learning. I think it's going to go more about the depth of learning. That is one. The second is, I think a focus would need to shift more towards the skills, because see, imagine 20 years back, had I told my parents that I want to be a podcaster or a YouTuber, my parents would have been like, are you out of your mind?
True. Yeah.
I mean, they wouldn't have even, like, the jobs that are going to be tomorrow, we don't know. We don't know. So I think the only thing we can do right now are give the tools that would help them in, like, for example, and I think a lot of it has already been talked about, like how do we build communication in our kids? Communication is something that transcends across. Then similarly, thinking about skills that transcends across. Similarly, like problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration. Those are some of the skill sets that we would need to inculcate and become more important than conceptual knowledge.
Absolutely. I also want you to just comment on why music for kids. Is it so very important that they get this facet of learning also?
Absolutely. Music. So music is one of the best ways to build fluency in a child in
Oh,
language. So how do we
scientifically proven?
scientifically proven? So why do we teach nursery rhymes to kids? That those
Okay.
are one of the first songs that they listen to.
Okay.
Because through repetition, through imitation, they build fluency. I'm not talking about comprehension. I'm talking about fluency
Fluency.
here. So music really helps in building that fluency. Second is the kind of when you hum something, it you're moving, your body moves along with it.
Okay.
So you make stronger and deeper connections with your gross and motor, fine motor skills. You are making connections. Your brain is making connections with something that you can. So for example, even if it's like A B C D E F G, you will make a connection with, oh, I had seen it somewhere. So
True,
music is a way of connecting with self and with environment.
Excellent. That's a learning for me, for sure. Well, we have a lot of viewers for this podcast who are all teenagers, college students, management students. What is your advice for some of those people who want to get into entrepreneurship, businesses, and all that? And I know life is not easy as an entrepreneur. What are the qualities that you actually want an entrepreneur to have? Can you just throw light?
Sure. I think as an entrepreneur, I can share the personal experiences that I had. I think one learning is that if you want to do something, the best way to learn it is by actually doing it. I know it's easy said than done. So, for example, when we started creating AI chatbot, there were so many things that we didn't know. So the best way to do it, to actually do it, was roll up our sleeves and get down to it, and taking that first step towards it. That is one. The second is, I think we've realized that nothing is permanent. What we are experiencing today, whether it's success, whether it's failure, nothing is permanent. So this too shall pass. And I think the third is, entrepreneurship is a mindset. Whether you are an employee or you're an entrepreneur, it's a mindset.
Absolutely.
So if, like I shared, never think about you're working for someone. If you think that you're working with someone, irrespective of what your what you say title is in the organization, it doesn't matter.
It's total entrepreneurship and total ownership.
It's total entrepreneurship, it's total ownership, and it's your mindset. And the fourth thing I would say in entrepreneurship is the biggest myth is work-life balance. It's just being present in that present. So what I did was, I realized like very early that I'm compartmentalizing my life, but I'm the same person who's bringing myself to work or outside work. So might as well be present where I am.
Great.
And make time for all the important people in my life. Prioritization is important there as well. So I would that would be my advice to everyone.
Great, Namita. It's nice talking to you, and I'm sure the audience have enjoyed this conversation, learned a lot from your startup, your ideas, your mindset, and your plans. And it's always a pleasure to have this IRE Talks of GIBS
Thank you so much
Business
for
School.
inviting me.
And pleasure to have you with us. And to all the audience, it's please don't forget to share, subscribe, and to our channel, that is at GIBS Business School Bangalore, and follow our GIBS IRE Talks and GIBS Business School on all social media platforms. I am Hari Prakash, Professor of Practice in GIBS, signing off for this edition of GIBS IRE Talks Podcast. Thank you all.
Thank you.